Hello, this is Ed from Ed, Fred, Ned, and you are listening to GuildCast.
GuildCast is a weekly podcast series based on the 3 pillars of the Graphic Artists Guild: advocacy, community, and business resources. Keep listening to learn more about the Graphic Artists Guild and visit our website at www.graphicartistsguild.org.
Yeah, I feel like the more people you meet, the more you empathize with different types of people. So
yeah, true.
If I were to become friends with a firefighter, I know the plights that firefighters go through. Or if I was best friends with a cop, I know from their perspective what it's like to be a cop. And so I think it's really just a matter of making those personal connections with as many people as possible and seeing as many perspectives as you can. And some people just don't have the ability to do that in their life. They don't have a chance to leave their town.
GuildCast is brought to you in part by Graphic Arts Today. This week's bonus episode, It Came From the South, features our South team, Tammy, Chrissy, Terrence, and Camille, as they talk flavors and growing up in the South as creatives.
I kind of wanted to bring up the last art party.
Let's do it.
Because Chrissy wasn't there. And I think Bill, was it Bill?
Yeah.
He brought up the prejudice that he had to the people toward the bias that he had to the people towards the South.
The South?
Yeah.
It's funny, right?
Yeah. He's like,
Bill does not hold back, ever.
Wait, I think I missed that part. What did he say?
He said that he had to get over the stereotypes for people he had, of what he had for the people of the South.
Yeah.
I thought that kind of played.
But the stereotypes that he's talking about, I think, are the super hardcore, we're recording this, aren't we? So, super hardcore, screw it, the Trumpers. I think that's what he was talking about. Like the people that are drinking the Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
He doesn't deal well with people who like that, people that are prejudiced and that sort of thing. That's what I think he was talking about. And also, a lot of people think we're idiots if you're from the South, and I think that's what he thought. It was almost like the stupidity thing. You know how people make fun of people from the South because of education. So I think that was part of his comment as well.
Well, growing up in D.C., the South was something that we would make fun of, even West Virginia or even Southern Virginia, because I grew up in Northern Virginia, and we would make the distinction every time, no, I grew up in Northern Virginia, not Southern Virginia. Mm-hmm. And so it's you're constantly doing that. And so for me, moving to Alabama was oh my God, you're what am I doing? What have I done wrong with my life that I'm in the year sort of thing?
Alabama.
Right?
Yeah.
So,
as you cross the border, you're gonna get dumber and dumber.
Yeah, and the banjos jumping in, and you're
oh my
ding,
God.
ding, 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 yeah. Well, the drive down here, I remember driving with my mom. So we're driving, and I had already been here, so I knew the drive, and I knew what was happening on the way in. When you cross into Alabama, there's about an hour until you hit Huntsville, and Huntsville's on the other side of the mountains. So when you're first driving, you pass fields and another field and a little broken down farm, and then there's nuclear silos, and you're oh my gosh, I'm in an episode of The Simpsons. Where am I? And you just drive and there's nothing. And I pointed to my mom and I was oh, that's a Mexican restaurant we've been to with Sam and his friends. And it's this little podunk little thing. She's you can see her starting to hyperventilate because the GPS is saying there's only 30 minutes to Huntsville. And she thinks that, that countryside was Huntsville. And she's well, now with the internet, you can visit museums with Google and a really nice art museum in Huntsville. She's yeah, now with Netflix, you can watch a lot of movies online. No, there's actually a really nice movie theater with reclining seats and everything. She's okay. And then we go over the little mountain, and I was I thought the skyline was bigger, and there was a few little dots of lights that you could see. And I was I thought it was bigger. And my mom was you can see her hyperventilating. And then we go over the last hill, and you see oh, it's a city, and there's more than 2 people that live here. And she but it's that mentality where you're gonna end up there's no street lights. It's just one guy named Joe who sells everything.
Right.
That's the mentality I grew up with, and I had no idea. So
GuildCast is a weekly podcast series based on the 3 pillars of the Graphic Artists Guild: advocacy, community, and business resources. Keep listening to learn more about the Graphic Artists Guild and visit our website at www.graphicartistsguild.org.
Was that primarily perpetuated through media, movies, cartoons?
Definitely.
I would imagine. I probably couldn't pinpoint exactly where I got these things from. I think it's just a general eliteness that comes from, and plus Northern Virginia is a very wealthy area.
It's very wealthy, yeah. And my family lives up there.
Yeah, we landed there before it became what it was. Yeah. So even for us, it was like we were caught in this weird middle zone. But everyone just talks crap about West Virginia and Alabama, Mississippi, the southern states and all that.
Yeah. And see, the funny thing is that my father grew up in West Virginia, and he was one of 6 kids. They had nothing. My grandmother went to college, his mother, when it was a time where you didn't go to college. And she also divorced her husband in a time where you didn't divorce your husband, and raised 6 kids by herself. And that was a long, long time ago.
Wow.
So I've been to where my father grew up. Which it very much looks like that whole thing that Dolly Parton always talks about, with the kids not having any shoes and these little broken down houses and things like that. So I think when you know that background, even when you've been there, visiting and stuff, it's even more wow, It's interesting.
The perception is also because the South has been maybe perceived as poorer than the North. That one of the things also.
Yes.
Well, there's that Hollywood Hillbillies or Beverly Hillbillies show.
They call it,
Yeah, we didn't have cable, so I'd watch those types of shows all the time, and it was
they call Georgia something, because you can do movies here and it's cheaper, but they call it something. What is it, Chrissy? Have you heard that term?
No, but I know what you're talking about. It's the cheap Hollywood or something like that.
Yeah, but it's not. It's it's Yollywood. I think that's what they call it. Yollywood or something like that.
Y'all.
Yeah.
Do they have a logo for that?
No, but there should be one, because perfect example, my husband, he works in the fishing industry here, shrimping and crabbing. So it's very interesting because the people that he works with have a much different perspective on life than our more liberal side of things. But he was at a restaurant in the middle of nowhere on the coast of Georgia, and he's sitting there at the restaurant, and he looks at this guy, and he's like, God, I know that guy. And he's like, but I don't know where from. It was Will Smith. He was doing a movie. And so his bouncer was sitting next to him, his bodyguard. And the bouncer turned around and looked at my husband, and Will Smith turned to the side, and it's my husband got it. That's Will Smith. And the bodyguard looked at him, and he just smiled, and my husband was like, all right. And the bodyguard waved at my husband, and my husband kept eating dinner. And then ironically, the very next day, there was this video that was online, and it was of Will Smith in a mosquito mask. And he was like, please, people of Georgia, do something about these mosquitoes. I'm gonna die. It's hilarious. And I was like, that's where we were. Yeah. But yeah, I think I think the South is considered poor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, one of the things that I experienced Jamaica-wise as well is when I'm even before I moved to America, it was having conversations with people. If I visited and I was having conversations with people, it wouldn't be unusual to hear somebody go, where is Jamaica? Or Jamaica, what's that? It's happened more than a couple of times, and they're where on the map is that? Is that in Europe? And the shock on my face is I guess you've never done geography, but then when I think about it, it's it really just depends on your background and what you learn and, what you grew up with and what you are exposed to, because I don't know a lot of details about, I could name all 50 states, for example. No, I don't know that everybody could do that, but you know what I'm saying? I don't know about American history. I don't know, you know what I'm saying? So it's just, it's also about, the environment and how people grow up, and just like what you guys are saying, it's just, this impression that you have in your mind of things based on, I don't know, TV or whatever else.
Yeah,
one time I got asked online. Oh my God, I was online. This was in the days of like ICQ, or you guys remember that? Or I guess MSN Messenger was, I think it was probably MSN Messenger. You guys know about that? You guys remember that? Mm-hmm. Right. So I remember I was messaging somebody. I don't remember how I found them. And they're like, oh, so where do you plug your computer into? Like into a plug in the wall, and like, oh, it's like a wall. Like this dude legit thought that I was like messaging him from a hut in like the bushes.
Oh man!
I was like, sir, so how do you think I have internet though? So funny.
Well, people have no idea where Argentina is a lot of time, and they're like, oh, that part of Brazil? No, but it's close to it at least. And I still remember being in the hallway in high school, going to talk to our guidance counselor for like applying to colleges and stuff. And there were these two kids that were like, everyone revered them as like the best students, but I had repeatedly seen them cheating, and like I didn't really like them very much. And one of them was like, man, I wish I was foreign. I was like, just then move to a different country. And they were like, what? Like, that's all foreigners, is that they're just in a different country. And like, they didn't grasp that idea. People weren't foreign, and they just like appeared out of nowhere. They had moved from somewhere.
Same thing with accents. It's the same thing with accents. Like, you have an accent. No, you have an accent. No, you have an accent. No, you have an accent. Yeah, same thing, I feel like.
Yeah. Something's forever stuck in my head.
Coming up on this episode of GuildCast.
You know what I'm saying? Like, jerk is really a Jamaican thing, to the point of I grew up, and every experience of eating outside, eating with family, or, traveling from one side of the island to the other, because I had family on one side of the island and I lived on the other. Like, that was something that we did on a regular basis. So I love road trips. I love nature. I love outside.
Join the Graphic Artists Guild to listen to the full version of this episode at www.graphicartistsguild.org. Thanks for listening to GuildCast. Coming up in next week's episode.
And it's really interesting because in the last year and a half, the Supreme Court has considered, or is considering, three major cases that could have a lot of ramifications for creators on copyright and intellectual property. And usually copyright cases or intellectual property cases don't really come up before the Supreme Court that often. So we're in this really interesting period where a lot is happening. So we've been really engaged on that. So
yeah, I think it's really interesting, as complicated as it gets sometimes, to understand all the details of, how everything works and the laws and stuff. I think it's really interesting, especially as more of a newbie, to kind of hear you dive into all of the details.
GuildCast is a weekly podcast series based on the 3 pillars of the Graphic Artists Guild: advocacy, community, and business resources. Keep listening to learn more about the Graphic Artists Guild, and visit our website at www.graphicartistsguild.org.